Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine a place that's, well, it's simultaneously the ground you're standing on, right? And also the biblical idea of an underworld.
Hmm.
And get this, it's also like a giant, smoky, sacrificial structure, all rolled into one.
It's a powerful image.
And from this, like, hidden, fiery place, you hear the sound of souls. But they're not just whispering, they're roaring,
Yeah.
demanding cosmic justice.
Yeah.
It echoes across, the whole spiritual timeline.
Yeah.
It's profound, it's mysterious,
Yeah.
and honestly, really dramatic. And it seems to hold the key to, well, the ultimate purification of everything.
Indeed, and that's what we're diving into today. We're looking at this really complex set of theological sources, and it all centers around one specific, very dramatic vision.
Right, from the book of Revelation,
Yeah.
chapter 6, verses 9 through 11.
Exactly. And this passage, it's so much more than just, a poetic description of suffering. It's presented as a kind of blueprint.
A blueprint for what?
There's the mechanism of divine reckoning, how it all works.
Okay, so our mission today, it sounds ambitious. We need to define precisely where these souls, the martyr souls, are actually waiting.
Yes.
And what does under the altar really symbolize?
Yeah.
Especially thinking about, ancient temple rituals.
Absolutely. And how does their waiting period, this enforced pause, connect the Old Testament sacrificial system
Okay.
directly to the mechanism that actually triggers the ultimate fate of creation itself?
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive, it sounds like we're going to have to connect some seemingly, well, separate ideas.
We do. We're talking about the soul, the spiritual essence, right?
Right.
But also the physical reality of blood spilled on the earth,
Hmm.
the location of the underworld, Hades, and then the complex architecture of the temple.
So it's not just about physical space.
No, not at all. We have to move beyond that simple spatial thinking and embrace this more nuanced, symbolic cosmic geography. The sources argue the earth itself is assigned a role here.
A spiritual role.
Yes, as a component of judgment.
So by the end of this, hopefully, you, listening, will understand why the very ground we stand on is described in these sources as having this spiritual role, like a temporary prison.
Right.
And maybe most importantly, what specific condition, which seems to depend on human choice, has to be met before that final ultimate justice is actually served.
That's the goal.
All right, let's start by walking right into the middle of that vision.
Okay, so the scene opens, the fifth seal is broken, and John, the seer, he isn't shown some, massive natural disaster or a world war.
No. What does he see?
It's more localized, but infinitely significant. It's a tableau, a scene focused on persecuted witnesses. He looks and he sees.
And what he sees are the souls. The sources here are incredibly precise, aren't they? Using the Greek word psyche.
That's right, psyche. It refers to the essential life principle, the inner self.
So it's critical we understand these aren't just vague spirits.
Mhm.
They are the core identity, the very being of the people whose lives were violently ended.
Exactly. And the sources are just as clear about why they were executed. They were killed specifically because they were faithful to God's word and because of the testimony they held on to.
So not political prisoners in the usual sense or like accidental casualties of war.
No, they were witnesses, people who paid the ultimate price for sticking to what they believed was revealed truth. And this immediately changes their status, you see. They're not just victims.
They become essential participants.
Essential participants in this huge cosmic drama.
And this detail, it's so important because it sets the criteria for who's actually waiting under this altar. It's a very specific group, the persecuted righteous.
Mm-hmm.
But let's focus on their position for a second. They are seen under the altar. Now, this location, you said it's the linchpin of our whole discussion today.
It really is. We'll define it more fully in a bit. But first, let's listen to what they're actually doing there.
Right. Are they just waiting quietly?
Far from it. They are active, very active participants in this vision. They're engaged in this incredibly energetic form of communication.
Communication.
They are calling out with a great voice. The Greek word krasso suggests something powerful, like a roar or a shout filled with urgency.
So it's not a whisper of pain. It sounds like a demand.
It is a demand, a legal appeal almost, not passive suffering.
But who are they appealing to? Who are they shouting at?
They address the ultimate authority. The text calls him the great sovereign.
So the ruler of all creation.
Yes. And the language they use, it clearly indicates they're appealing directly to the highest seat of cosmic power and, well, justice.
Okay, so what's their specific demand? This sounds like the most dramatic part.
It really is. It's phrased as a question, but it's loaded with impatience, righteous indignation even.
What do they ask?
How long until you render judgment upon those dwelling on the earth and avenge our blood? They're demanding a specific, and they seem to think, imminent reckoning.
They're basically asking, when is the trial going to end? Like, we've presented our evidence, our blood, when's the verdict?
Exactly. They're holding up their spilled blood as Exhibit A, insisting it demands a ruling.
And this demand, is it general or targeted?
Oh, it's highly targeted. The sources we're looking at explicitly identify this cry as a direct appeal for judgment against the entire structure of organized evil that persecutes believers.
The entire structure.
Yes. To use the very specific term that's derived from these sources, they are demanding the judgment of what's called Satan's destructive infrastructure.
Okay, let's pause there. Satan's destructive infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's intense language. For listeners maybe not familiar with this kind of deep theological terminology, what do the sources mean by that? Is it just like individual bad people?
Well, the interpretation presented is that these martyrdoms, they aren't just, that's a good way to put it. It's this unified, oppressive world system that shed the martyr's blood. And because of that, they demand that the system itself be completely annihilated.
Wow. So their personal suffering gets immediately translated into this huge cosmic political demand. Their own spilled blood becomes the material evidence that triggers the request for the ultimate takedown of the very structures that cause their death.
Precisely. Their suffering connects directly to the final judgment. It turns the site of their death, the ground itself, into the starting point of the countdown, so to speak.
Okay, so the divine response then, it has to address both things, right? Their need for comfort and this huge demand for justice.
Right, and it's a two-part answer in the vision. First, the comfort part.
What's that?
They are each given a pristine white robe.
A white robe, what does that signify?
It's an immediate assurance. It signifies their righteousness, their purity, their justified status before God. It's the instant guarantee of their salvation. We'll talk a lot more about what that robe guarantees later on, but for now, the key is they're spiritually secure.
Okay, so comfort and security, check. But then comes the second part, the part that creates all the tension.
Exactly. They're told to rest, to pause, for a little while longer.
Ah. So the judgment confirmed, their salvation is secure, but the actual execution of justice, it's delayed.
It's delayed, but the delay isn't arbitrary. This is the crucial condition, the conditional clause. The final judgment cannot be executed until the number of their fellow servants and brethren others who are destined to be killed just like them is complete.
A number, like a divine census. A heavenly roster that needs to be filled.
That's the idea presented. A predetermined finite number of martyrs must seal their testimony with their lives before the cosmic hammer finally falls.
That's an enormous theological concept right there. It means the entire history of creation, the whole timeline leading up to the final purification, is somehow tethered to the free will choices and the endurance of a specific, limited group of human beings.
Their endurance becomes the cosmic metric. Their suffering isn't pointless in this view. It's the essential measure that has to be filled up before the final judgment can proceed against that oppressive infrastructure, Satan's infrastructure.
So until the very last person on that list seals their testimony.
Until that very last one does so, the souls under the altar have to wait. They're secure in their white robes, yes, but they're still roaring for justice.
So the cry is heard, it's validated, their status is secured. But justice itself is put on hold until this required tally of faith is finalized. Okay, now we absolutely have to dive into the trickiest part. Where exactly is this place, and how can it be both earth and some kind of spiritual containment unit?
All right, so to really pin down this location under the altar, we have to start where the source material starts, with its foundational understanding of life, death, and sacrifice.
Okay, where does it take us?
It takes us back to the Old Testament, specifically to Leviticus chapter 17. And it emphasizes this absolutely crucial concept that the life, the soul, the animating principle of a creature, the Hebrew word is nephesh, is inherent within the blood.
The life is in the blood. I've heard that phrase.
It's fundamental theologically. The blood is the repository of life. So the thinking goes, if a life is taken violently, the essence of that life, the soul or nephesh, is intrinsically bound up in that act of bloodshed. And it's connected to the material location where the blood actually lands.
So the connection persists after death.
Yes. This relationship is what allows the demand for justice to persist long after physical death. The blood on the ground carries the cry.
And to illustrate this, the sources point to someone specific, right? The first martyr,
Exactly. They immediately turn to the archetype of the martyr, Abel.
Cain and Abel.
Right. Abel is presented as the first witness, the primal martyr. When Cain kills him, God confronts Cain. And what does God say? He says Abel's blood cries out. It screams, it wails from the ground.
From the ground itself.
Yes. The soil has absorbed the blood, which contains the life principle, the nephesh. And that life principle is now demanding justice from its physical location on Earth.
Okay, I see where this is going. This is the crucial interpretive bridge the sources are building.
Precisely. If the life, the soul, is in the blood,
Yeah,
and Abel's blood crying out means his soul is crying out,
right.
and that soul is crying out from the ground,
Yeah.
then we have our location equivalence.
The place under the altar where the martyrs in Revelation are.
Exactly. Symbolically and spatially, in a kind of spiritual sense, it's equivalent to the Earth, the physical ground itself.
So the earth, our planet, where the martyrs actually shed their blood, that is the location identified as being below the altar.
That's the argument presented.
But okay, that raises a huge question about the earth itself.
Yeah.
Is it just, a neutral stage, a backdrop? Or does it have some kind of spiritual designation in this framework?
The sources insist it has a specific spiritual designation, and it's one that places it firmly within the domain of the underworld.
Wait, the earth is in the underworld.
This ground, our planet Earth, is specifically identified as being contained within the domain of Hades.
Hades, I usually think of that as the realm of the dead. The Greek underworld concept, maybe Sheol in Hebrew thought. So you're saying the earth, the world of the living, is actually located cosmically, symbolically, inside the domain of Hades.
Yes. According to this interpretation, Hades isn't some distant mythological hellscape in this context. It's understood as the spiritual region that actually encompasses the Earth.
Encompasses it.
Yes. It's defined in these sources as the location of temporary confinement for all things subject to sin and death. It's the spiritual enclosure where the consequences of the fall are currently being contained.
That really reframes how you think about where we are. We're not just on the earth, we're on the ground, which is within this larger spiritual enclosure called Hades.
That's the picture being painted.
Okay. Now we have to connect that enclosure to the temple imagery. Why is Hades considered equivalent to an altar? That seems like a leap.
It's a massive symbolic leap, but it's central to the argument. The sources draw a direct and I think profound symbolic equation. Hades, this spiritual location of temporary judgment and confinement, is directly linked to the bronze altar.
The bronze altar, the huge one in the temple court.
That's the one, the massive sacrificial implement found in the court of the tabernacle and later the temple.
But how can a place associated with death, sin, maybe even judgment, Hades, be equated with something built for purification and atonement, like the bronze altar? Isn't that functionally contradictory?
It seems contradictory on the surface, absolutely, but it becomes functionally parallel when you understand the altar's role in terms of separation and consumption.
Separation and consumption, explain that.
Well, the bronze altar was the place where everything related to sin. The animal sacrifice representing the sinner, the flesh, the corruption, the physical results of sin was consumed by fire. It was burned up, reduced to ashes.
Okay.
It acted as a boundary. It separated the unclean, the things associated with sin and death, from the holy space within the sanctuary.
So it was like the designated containment unit for the sacrifice and, well, the resulting mess, the ashes, the blood.
Precisely. It contained the process of dealing with sin through consumption. So the interpretation here is that God confined all of creation, especially everything under the shadow and effects of sin, within this symbolic bronze altar, which is equated with Hades.
So Hades is the containment unit.
Yes. It's the place of separation and, crucially, gradual consumption before the final purification. The sources even draw parallels to other scriptures about judgment.
Like what?
Like passages in Peter and Jude about God confining sinful angels in dark pits or eternal chains until the final judgment. Hades functions similarly for creation under sin.
Okay, so Hades' function isn't just holding the dead. Its essential function, symbolized by the bronze altar, is to hold everything contaminated by sin and death, keeping it separate from God's pure presence while it all awaits the final purifying fire.
That's the concept. And remember where the martyrs are.
They're under this structure.
Exactly. Their blood was spilled on the earth, which is identified as the floor, the base of this symbolic altar Hades structure. Their souls are crying out from inside the place of confinement.
And they're using their own spilled life essence, their blood,
as the enduring evidence demanding that the altar's ultimate function, total consumption, final judgment be carried out. Finally.
So their waiting place is literally the evidence room for their cosmic court case. Their souls are shouting from the base of the divine incinerator, demanding it be fully lit.
You could put it that way, yes.
This structural equation, then, Earth equals Hades equals the bronze altar. This is foundational. We need this to understand the next step, which must be defining which altar we're talking about, because there were two, right?
Yes, absolutely. Now that we've established this symbolic geography, Earth as the base of the bronze altar, which represents Hades, we need to get really clear on the altars themselves. Because the temple structure, the model, had two main altars, and they served entirely different functions. Understanding this difference tells us precisely why the martyrs are waiting exactly where they are described.
Okay, let's detail the first one again. The bronze altar. What was it like physically?
The bronze altar, also called the altar of burnt offering, was huge. It dominated the outer court of the tabernacle and temple.
Dimensions.
Typically described as 5 cubits by 5 cubits square and 3 cubits high, covered entirely in bronze, hence the name, and it had these distinctive 4 horns at the corners.
And its function.
This was the place for the burnt offering. Fire was kept constantly burning there. It consumed the flesh of the sacrifices, representing sin being dealt with. The blood was often poured out at its base, and the ashes collected beneath it.
So very physical. Blood, fire, flesh, ashes, representing physical sacrifice and purification by destruction.
Exactly. And importantly, it stood outside the main sanctuary building in the court, accessible, in a sense, to all the people who needed atonement through sacrifice.
Okay, that's the bronze altar. Then there was the second one, inside.
Yes, the golden incense altar. This one was completely different, much smaller, more intimate, far more sacred in its placement.
How small?
Only about 1 cubit by 1 cubit square and 2 cubits high. And it was covered in pure gold, not bronze, often described with a golden rim or crown around the top.
And location was key here.
Critically important. It was located inside the first room of the sanctuary proper, the holy place, right in front of the veil that separated the holy place from the Holy of Holies, where the Ark and the mercy seat were.
And its function was different too. No blood.
Absolutely no blood sacrifice ever happened there. Its sole purpose was for burning specific sacred incense.
And the incense symbolized.
The prayers and intercession of the saints rising up directly into God's presence. It represented spiritual communion, worship, prayer.
Okay, so bronze altar.
Yeah.
Outer court, large bronze, fire, blood, consumption, judgment on sin, golden altar.
Wow.
Inner holy place, small, gold, incense, prayer, access to God's presence. Very distinct.
Extremely distinct. Now, given our earlier symbolic equation that Hades Earth is the place holding blood, sin, death, awaiting fiery consumption,
Yeah.
it becomes pretty clear which altar the souls must be located under, symbolically.
It has to be the bronze altar, the one associated with blood and fire and judgment.
The sources confirm that deduction explicitly. The martyrs are located in the region associated with the bronze altar, the altar of blood, sacrifice, and consumption by fire.
Not the altar of pure prayer and intercession.
Correct. They are symbolically situated in the court, the place where the mechanism of judgment is located, the place represented by the bronze altar.
Okay, that makes sense structurally. But then the sources bring in a connection between these two altars through a specific ritual. You mentioned the Day of Atonement.
Yes, the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. This is crucial because the ritual described shows how the process, initiated by the martyr's cry, moves symbolically from the outer court, bronze altar, into the holy place, golden altar.
How does that work?
The sources point us to Revelation chapter 8. There we see an angel performing a specific action.
What does the angel do?
The angel takes fire from the bronze altar, the very altar associated with judgment, and the martyr's location using a golden censer.
Okay, takes fire from the judgment altar. Then what?
Then the angel mixes this fire with many incense offerings, and the text explicitly says this incense represents the prayers of all the saints.
Ah, so the fire from the bronze altar, the place of judgment, gets combined with the incense, representing the prayers rising from the golden altar's domain.
Exactly. Walk us through this ritual bridge. What does it symbolize when the fire of judgment, the element of destruction, is mixed with the pure incense of prayer?
Well, think about the earthly Day of Atonement ritual. What did the high priest do?
He would take coals of burning fire from the bronze altar outside.
Right, from the place of daily sacrifice and dealing with sin.
And he would carry those specific coals inside the sanctuary into the holy place.
And use that fire.
to ignite the special incense on the golden altar. The smoke from that incense, ignited by the fire from the place of sacrifice, would then fill the space and cover the mercy seat behind the veil, acting as the means of atonement.
Okay, this is a breathtaking symbolic sequence when you apply it here. The fire of judgment, the very element linked to consuming sin and corruption taken from the symbolic location of the martyrs, bronze altar, earth, Hades, is the exact thing used to carry the prayers.
Including the martyrs' own loud demands for justice.
Up to the ultimate authority, represented by the golden altar and the space beyond the veil.
It signifies a moment of divine transition. It means, according to this interpretation, that the start of the Great Atonement, the final judgment process, isn't just initiated by some abstract divine decree. No. It's triggered by a complex reaction that actually starts at the site of the martyrs' suffering and their cry. The fire of their judgment, fueled by their spilled blood, combines with the prayers of all the saints.
And that combination creates the cloud of incense offered on the golden altar, which initiates the final purification before the throne itself.
That's the symbolic flow presented. The cry of the martyrs from the bronze altar zone, Hades Earth, is the necessary trigger.
And that cry, transformed or maybe amplified by the fire associated with their sacrifice, moves symbolically from the court of judgment to the holy place of intercession and culminates right before the throne. The whole system is designed, it seems, to respond directly to their suffering and their demand.
And the sources really emphasize that this ritual, described in Revelation 8, symbolizes the commencement of the great final atonement. This entire process of spiritual purification is shown as something where righteous suffering on earth catalyzes the necessary cleansing actions in the spiritual heaven.
This also subtly justifies the delay we talked about earlier, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, the fire needs to be, metaphorically speaking, fully hot. The number of sacrifices contributing to that fire at the base of the bronze altar needs to be complete.
I see.
Only when that tally is full can that transformative fire be taken up, mixed with the prayers on the golden altar, and initiate the final reckoning. The conditions have to be met first.
That fits the sequence, yes. The completion of the number enables the next step in the ritual process. Now, we need to introduce another layer here, a really vital distinction the sources make. The difference between the model and the true reality.
Okay.
While we've been using the physical temple structure, the bronze altar, the golden altar, the court, the holy place, to understand the function and the process, the sources firmly ground this entire narrative in a cosmological reality. The earthly setups is just a blueprint, a shadow.
Right. We're dealing with an analogy. The earthly sanctuary, the tabernacle or temple, it wasn't the ultimate reality itself. It was just a shadow and pattern, as Hebrews says.
Exactly, a shadow and pattern of the true sanctuary. The earthly sanctuary is the model temple. The true sanctuary, the actual reality, exists elsewhere.
Where?
In what the sources call the true heaven, sometimes also termed the heaven of angels, a different dimensional reality.
Okay, so there's a location differential. And that must profoundly affect the status of the martyrs we've been discussing.
It does. The earthly incense altar, the golden one inside, is just a model of the actual incense altar in that true heavenly temple.
And similarly, the earthly court, where the physical bronze altar stood,
is the shadow counterpart to the Hades region, the symbolic location we identified.
And this distinction, it reinforces the idea that the souls under the altar, even though they have the white robes,
they're still in a waiting area. They are in the shadow realm, the symbolic court. They haven't entered the true sanctuary yet.
They're saved, they're secure, but they are still functionally in the court, associated with the bronze altar symbolism.
Correct. And this is underscored by one of the, most sobering points that these sources raise.
Which is?
The assertion that only the resurrected Jesus has actually ascended into that true, actual temple in the heaven of angels.
Only Jesus. So no human being yet. Not even the martyrs.
According to this specific interpretation, no human being, no matter how righteous, no matter if they were martyred and have received their white robe, has yet undergone the resurrection change.
The full bodily resurrection and transformation.
Yes. The kind of transformation that would grant them entry into the physical or dimensional reality of the true heaven, the true sanctuary. Even the martyrs who have already died and been sealed are described as waiting in this shadow realm, the symbolic court of the bronze altar Hades.
Wow. That definitely challenges some common ideas about, immediately going to be with God in the highest heaven the moment you die.
It suggests a more structured, phased process. This waiting period in the Hades bronze altar region is presented as mandatory for everyone, it seems, until the final cosmic process unfolds and is completed.
So Hades, in this view, isn't hell in the final sense like the lake of fire?
Absolutely not. It's crucial to distinguish. It's the necessary temporary spiritual containment unit, the waiting room of the spiritual order, you could say. A space currently under the effects of sin and death, awaiting its own scheduled destruction as part of the final judgment.
Okay. This leads us to the final piece of this cosmic geography puzzle. We need to place Hades within the complete spiritual structure. If the bronze altar represents the base level in the earthly sanctuary diagram, where does Hades sit cosmically, especially in relation to the purer, higher spiritual structures mentioned in Scripture?
The sources are quite specific here, too. They place Hades, symbolically the bronze altar region, below two other essential components seen in heavenly visions or temple symbolism.
Below what?
First, below the laver, and second, below the sea of glass.
Okay, let's break that down. The laver, that was the big basin of water in the temple court, right? Priests used it to wash before entering the sanctuary.
Correct. And cosmically or symbolically, the laver is interpreted as referring to the primeval waters mentioned in the creation accounts.
Like the waters of chaos or unformed matter.
Something like that. It symbolizes the realm of creation that needs cleansing, purification, ordering, before it can be brought into the holy order of the sanctuary proper. And Hades, the realm of sin and death, is placed beneath even this preparatory cleansing water.
Beneath the water level, symbolically speaking, okay. And then beneath the sea of glass. That's a really striking image from the book of Revelation. What does that represent?
The Sea of Glass, mentioned in Revelation 4 and 15, is often described as this vast, crystalline, pure expanse, like a floor, directly before the throne of God.
Like perfect stillness and clarity.
Exactly. It symbolizes complete purity, stability, unmoving, perfected holiness, total transparency before God.
So the fact that Hades' bronze altar is placed beneath the Sea of Glass, what does that signify?
It means that the entire domain associated with sin, death, judgment, and temporary confinement is profoundly separated from the final perfected realm of God's immediate presence. Separated by, first, the laver, representing the need for cleansing, and then by this crystal clear boundary of ultimate perfection, the Sea of Glass.
So if you visualize it vertically, Hades is at the absolute bottom.
That's the picture. The spiritual structure is sort of stacked. At the very top, you have the throne and the Sea of Glass representing perfection in God's presence.
Okay.
Beneath that, symbolically, the laver representing cleansing, maybe the boundary of ordered creation.
Right.
And then at the very bottom, you have the bronze altar, Hades, the zone of containment, judgment, sin, and death.
This powerful visualization really underscores the temporary nature of Hades, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's the earthly court, the receptacle for death and sin, which is explicitly scheduled for complete eradication. By placing it symbolically at the very bottom of the cosmic structure, the sources confirm its destiny. It's going to be swept away entirely.
Like the ashes under the physical bronze altar had to be regularly removed from the sanctuary grounds.
Precisely that analogy. It provides immense clarity. The martyrs are waiting, yes, but they're waiting in the lowest designated spiritual space, the temporary holding area for sin and death, which itself is destined for destruction. Their wait is temporary, but their specific location is essential to how the judgment process unfolds from the bottom up, so to speak. Okay, so we've pinpointed the martyr's location symbolically under the bronze altar, within Hades, at the base of the cosmic structure. Now we circle back to the most vital question. Why the wait? Why the delay?
Right. They have their white robes, they're secure, but they're still crying out, how long?
And the answer, according to these sources, lies in the conditions attached to those white robes, and also in this profound cosmic requirement for the validation of free will itself.
Okay, let's focus intensely on those white robes first. We said they're a guarantee of salvation. But the sources stress they signify something even more specific, linked to the ultimate transformation.
Yes. The white robes given to the martyrs are explicitly stated in this interpretation to be the guarantee of participation in the first resurrection.
The first resurrection. That's a key term in Revelation especially.
Yeah.
Why is that specific resurrection so important? What does it guarantee?
It's presented as the exclusive and absolutely critical requirement for participating in the perfected cosmos. It guarantees entry into the ultimate eternal dwelling place, the New Jerusalem.
The holy city.
Exactly. And the sources make it very clear that entry into the New Jerusalem is highly restricted. It's not a general admission ticket.
Who gets in?
Only those who are resurrected in the first resurrection. And crucially, they possess perfected spiritual bodies suitable for that eternal realm. This is why the white robes are so profoundly significant for the martyrs.
They're like the certificate of eligibility.
Precisely. Stamped with the purity they achieved through their faithful testimony, proven faithful even when it cost them their lives. They are shown to be cleansed by the blood of the Lamb.
So it's not just a general heavenly access pass. It's a specific invitation to the highest realm of the perfected universe. They are the purified elite, you might say, who prove their fidelity through the ultimate test.
That's the status the white robe confirms. And this is the crucial, but despite this guaranteed glorious destiny, their cry for justice, and indeed the final consummation, remains unsatisfied. It has to wait until two critical prerequisites for the entire cosmic system are met.
Okay, two prerequisites. What's the first one?
The first one is, relatively speaking, the simpler one. It's that divine calculus we mentioned earlier. The full, predetermined, finite number of martyrs must be complete. The roster has to be filled, every slot accounted for.
The counting has to finish. Okay, what's the second prerequisite? This sounds like the deeper one.
It is. This is the philosophical linchpin, really, of the entire eschatology presented here. The truth and the sincerity of God's commandment, God's law, must be definitively proven by the actions of the creatures themselves.
Proven by creatures.
Through the martyrs, it's presented as a great cosmic test of integrity. The martyrs essentially become the proving ground.
Proving ground for what?
They are demonstrating that the divine law, God's revealed will, the blueprint for righteous existence, is actually viable, that it's true, that it's achievable even under the most brutal conditions imaginable, even when facing the full force of Satan's destructive infrastructure.
So they prove it's not just a nice idea, but something that can actually be lived out, even to the point of death.
Correct. The sources explicitly state that this truth, this sincerity of the commandment, is proven when the martyrs, through their unwavering faithfulness, their fidelity, their willingness to accept death rather than renounce their testimony, when they successfully overcome death itself in this way.
They overcome death by accepting it faithfully.
Yes. They prove that true loyalty to God transcends the instinct for physical self-preservation. They demonstrate that the divine system, the divine law, is robust enough to endure the ultimate challenge thrown at it by sin and death.
And what does this proof, this victory achieved by human free will, choosing faithfulness over life, what does that accomplish cosmically? You said this was the heart of the matter.
According to this interpretation, this ultimate act of willing fidelity, this sacrificial witness, it completes the free will of creatures.
Completes free will. What does that mean?
Think about it this way, and it's a profound thought. If a creature, given complete freedom of choice, can freely choose to maintain faithfulness to God, even when faced with the absolute cessation of its own existence, then the integrity and the ultimate purpose of free will itself is solidified. It's proven perfect, complete, victorious. The potential for sin, which fundamentally relies on the creature choosing self-interest or self-preservation over divine truth.
Okay.
That potential is, in principle, permanently eradicated from the system by this demonstration. Free will has achieved its intended, perfect, God-aligned outcome through the martyr's choice.
Wow. Okay. So the cry of the martyrs gets the process moving. It initiates the call for judgment. But it's their endurance, their final act of sacrificial fidelity, that actually completes the necessary conditions for the universe to be perfected.
That's the argument. The delay is necessary because the cosmic system requires this existential proof, this completion of the test of free will, before it can enter its finalized, perfected, eternal state.
So once that condition is met, the number is complete, and the ultimate proof of free will through martyrdom is demonstrated.
Once those are both fulfilled, then the final act of destruction, the final purification, can finally commence. The waiting is over. Judgment is executed.
And the sources, they detail the specific action required for this final purification. It involves the altar again.
Yes. God will ignite the bronze altar.
Ignite the bronze altar itself, not just the sacrifices on it.
Ignite the entire symbolic structure. This is the moment where the symbolic location of confinement Hades, the bronze altar, becomes the reality of terminal destruction. The temporary containment cell is set ablaze by the final, comprehensive fire of judgment.
And what happens then? To Hades, to death.
The entire system of confinement and mortality is consumed. Hades itself, and death as a principle or entity, along with all concepts, beings, structures related to sin and mortality.
Everything.
Everything. All the ashes and corruption symbolically accumulated throughout history at the base of that altar. They'll be completely consumed and then thrown into the lake of fire.
Which the text calls
the second death. The final irreversible end for sin and death. The fire that was perpetually burning on the bronze altar to consume sacrifices finally becomes comprehensive, consuming the symbolic altar itself and all it represents.
So the bronze altar, this fiery place of temporary sacrifice, temporary confinement, the symbol of Hades and earth under judgment, is utterly eradicated by the ultimate fire of God's final judgment. Nothing connected to that old system of sin and death survives.
Nothing. And the outcome. The ultimate result.
Cosmic perfection.
Cosmic perfection, when all evil is utterly eradicated, when Satan's destructive infrastructure is finally incinerated, creation itself is completed. The universe is purified by fire, finally fulfilling God's original design.
And this completion was only possible after the creatures themselves,
Mm-hmm.
specifically the martyrs, had proven the truth and viability of God's law through their ultimate sacrifice.
Exactly. The entire history of human suffering, particularly the suffering of the faithful witnesses, therefore, wasn't a mistake or a sign of God's absence in this view. It was the necessary crucible.
The forge.
The forge required to prove the strength of free will aligned with God, and thus to forge a flawless, eternal cosmos free from the possibility of sin's return.
This perspective really shifts how you view martyrdom. It's not just a tragic exception, it becomes the central, necessary engine driving cosmic history towards its final completion. Hashtag outro. Okay, wow. Here's where it gets really interesting when you put it all together. What we've seen through this deep dive is that the waiting place of the martyrs, the ground, the area symbolically under the bronze altar, the domain called Hades, it's not just some, inert holding cell, totally divorced from the process of history.
Not at all. It's presented as an active component. In fact, the very trigger mechanism for the final process of justice and purification.
This location, linked by that powerful, irreversible symbolism of blood and soul, it's the site where this great cosmic conflict of free will is actually measured and ultimately decided. The symbolic bronze altar is holding the weight, the entirety of sin's consequences.
Just waiting. Waiting for that essential condition, the completion of the faithful number, the final proof of fidelity to be met.
So that it and everything it contains can be utterly consumed by the fire of final judgment.
That's the picture. The ultimate fate of the universe in this interpretation is literally counting on the individual decisions of every single designated martyr to hold true to their testimony right to the end.
The final purification hinges on the completion of this human story of faithfulness.
It really does. This deep dive, I think, shows that the suffering of the individual martyr, the physical shedding of their life principle in their blood, and the spiritual cry of their soul from the ground is cosmically essential. It's not wasted.
Yeah.
Their patient endurance, their waiting, and ultimately their final faithful act proves the eternal truth and goodness of the divine law. And that proof is presented as the ultimate trigger for the eventual completion of free will's purpose, and thus the absolute purification of the entire universe.
So here's the provocative thought to leave you with. If the final, perfected state of all existence rests on the completion of human free will, and on the victorious endurance of those specific individuals who face death for their faith, what does that imply about the power, the significance of your own testimony, your own daily choices right now, in the face of whatever darkness or challenges you encounter? If the universe is, in a sense, waiting for this ongoing proof of fidelity before the end can come, how are you contributing to that final tally? Something to think about.